Shalom, brothers and sisters. This week we're reading the Torah portion Vayikra, and our main topic is going to be on the topic of sacrifice because we're reading the first 6 chapters of the book of Leviticus. We've just opened and entered into the book of Leviticus, and all 6 chapters focus on different types of sacrifices for different individuals. And so what we see from this Torah portion is that no matter what kind of a person you are, no matter what kind of a status you have, whether you were a priest, a prophet, a teacher, or just a regular individual, you all needed sacrifice. And if we read Ecclesiastes 7:20, it actually says, "Surely there is not a righteous man on earth who does what is good and doesn't sin. For we all sin here on earth." And that's why the law of sacrifice is given in this week's Torah portion. And we notice that as you are spiritually higher throughout your life and your status, the greater your sacrifice is. And the importance behind that is because we see that the higher you are in status, the more ego you have, the more pride you have. This is just a worldly manner that we possess. And so it's important for us to understand that when we are high in pride and ego, not only will we judge more because we are teachers, but we have to watch out because we can fall very easily. And that's why we see that the sacrifices for them was much higher. You know, we have like a bull rather than an individual who would have to give a dove or a flour offering with oil and incense. And so one example we see of great ego is Satan, right? A high angel of the Lord who wanted to become greater than him, and because of this he falls. And so it's a great example that we see of someone who is so high in status and they fall because they want to be greater. And so we have to watch out for that as we're growing in our spiritual journey and coming closer to God. And if we're starting to teach others and spread the word, we have to understand that we'll be judged more harshly, and Satan God will be allowing him to tempt us and have us potentially fall, right? So we could look at Job, right? We know through the temptations, trials, and tribulation he went through, but he stayed faithful. So we need to strive to be like that. And so we see that everyone needs sacrifice because sacrifice makes us clean. And so through the purity of sacrifice, we may continue, our sin may be forgiven, we may give thanks to the Lord, peaceful offering. And so we see actually throughout this chapter that there was 3 types of offerings. We have our peaceful offerings, or thankful offerings to the Lord for everything. We have our sin offerings, which were for something we have committed, and so we went to the priest and sacrificed what we were able to afford. And we also had the burnt offerings. The burnt offerings were very important because unlike the sin offering and the peaceful offering, where a portion would go to the priests or a portion would go to the individuals giving the sacrifice, the burnt offering was fully burnt and put into smoke to the Lord. And so this was an incense that was good to the Lord when a burnt offering happened. And so the burnt offering of an animal, what does it show us in a spiritual aspect? Well, inside of us, right, our temple, we have animals, and we may have an animal like spirit inside of us. And so we may be like a bull. We may just not want to listen to anyone. We may want to go the other way or destroy stuff, right? Just like a bull would want to do. We may have the spirit of a sheep, right? Shepherds always lose their sheep. We may want to wander off back and forth to different religions, to different churches, and we may be lost in our lives. So we may have the spirit of a sheep inside of us. We may be maybe like a tiger who wants to kill people with our words and bring negativity. We may want to be, or we may have the spirit of a sloth inside of us. We may be just lazy and slow in life. And so these are things inside of us, these animal characteristics, the spirit that we have inside of us that we need to kill. We need to destroy it. We need to sacrifice it and burn it fully from our lives. We need to remove it. Just like they burnt these offerings fully into smoke, we need to remove it from inside of us so that we don't have this, right? Because this spirit inside of us, of laziness, of anger, of wanting to not go the correct way, not wanting to listen to others, these animal characteristics, they are separating us from the Lord because they're bringing us into the ways of the world. Because if you do not want to listen to what your brother is telling you, you're turning away from him and sticking to your pride, right? These are characteristics that the Lord does not like, and it separates us from him, because in doing so, we're getting further and further away from the law. So it's important for us to kill, right? To kill and burn this animal spirit inside of us that we may have, so that our temple becomes clean and we change. And we change for better. Now we have purity in our temple. We have a connection to the Lord and a relationship that we could build upon him and directly contact him, right? Because there's no separation from us. And so the importance of sacrifice, and the reason why back then they did it, was because build change. So when we do this, right, we also have to build change in our lives. We have to remove this, but then build change. And so what I'm trying to say is that when they gave a sacrifice for their sin, for example, right, and they saw this animal suffering and dying for them, this wanted to bring change in a person, because you see how an animal is suffering for something you've committed wrong. And so you want to change so that that does not happen again. Or, also they're giving a portion of what they had, what they could give to the Lord. And so, to grow in life, basically business financially, right? Just from a standpoint, they can't always be falling into sin and giving what they had to the Lord. So they wanted to change it, wanted to build change in their lives. And so in our lives, we have now not these physical sacrifices, because our Messiah, Yeshua HaMashiach, walked on this earth, died, and through his sin, through his sacrifice, we are saved. But we see that we read about his sacrifice, his suffering, what he went through, and because of that, we do not want to use his sacrifice in vain. So we ask for forgiveness through his blood. We repent and we change from our ways, because we know what he had to go through for us. So we need to understand the importance of sacrifice, and we need to remove this inner animal that we have inside of us, so that we do not have to fall in the ways of the world. We do not have these horrible characteristics in our life that separate us from the Lord. And that's what we can understand from this week's Torah portion in the general topic of sacrifice of different types of animals for different types of individuals and in their status.